We are just 2 nights away from the 60th running of the Southern 500, so who better to reminisce about some of the best races in the Southern 500 history than our WBTW News 13 Darlington historian, Cecil Chandler. Thanks for coming, Cecil.
Well, it's good to be here.
How many Southern 500s have you covered?
It's hard to say. Let's see, since 1968, I didn't miss one up until probably 2000, so I've covered all of them since that time period. Every time Cale Yarborough was in the winner's circle, I was there with him.
You were there with him
five
times.
You got it.
Wow. How much has it changed? I mean, I know it's changed so many times since the early years.
Racing's changed a lot. I remember when I was 12 years old, the first race I went to with some friends, I think it cost us $3 to sit in the stands. And then when I was in high school, it cost us $5 to go in the infield. And you could get a little closer to the drivers in, but now they're kind of away from the crowd. Their sponsors keep them busy all the time. Racing's changed a lot, but it's still racing. If you live in Darlington, you've got to be a race fan.
All right, let's take a look at some of the old video from some of the old Southern 500s. Cecil, let's start off with, of course, Cale Yarborough, the local driver here winning back in 1968. What was it like covering Cale?
Let me tell you, this guy had more determination about winning a race than anybody I've ever interviewed in my life. I mean, he always told me, he says, Cecil, do you remember who finished second in a race? And you don't. He said, you always remember who finishes first. And he said, and that's what I'm driving for. I want to be number one. And I can remember when he won 7 races in a row, and I used to go out and interview him on Monday mornings at his home, and he'd always say, I'll see you next Monday. 7 straight Mondays. Cale he's a super driver.
Obviously, Richard Petty, he's the king. Here you are,
boy,
interviewing
am I a young
him.
guy there. This was back in the early 80s with Richard Petty. Probably one of the nicest guys in the world. You can sum it up with 2 words, the king. I've seen him stand in line, sign autographs for 70,000 people at his 25th anniversary. He stood there and signed every autograph, took a break to eat, did interviews with television. But this guy, that's why they call him the king. Everybody loves Richard Petty.
What are some of the other memories that you're always going to think of when you think Darlington?
The big one I can remember, I was in the 11th grade I was pulling copy for news reporters, and I was in high school. And I was on the first turn, which was the first turn then in 1965. When Cale came around, he went over. And I'm sitting there, and I said, oh, my God, he's going over the rail. So I went running down the steps, and the press people behind me were back to knock me down. I was just a kid. And we were running over to the fence, and the car's up against the fence. Cale gets out, and he starts walking toward us. He says, tell him I'm okay. I looked around, I didn't know who he was talking about. Tell somebody he was okay. And the press guys were writing notes, asking him questions, and that was unbelievable. Cale went out of the racetrack, lands up beside the fence, gets out of the car before anybody gets to him, walks
through
off.
the air like an astronaut, he
that's
said.
the kind of guy he was. That's a real memorable one for me. That's probably the most memorable.
Almost 40 years of covering Darlington. How many more you got left, Cecil?
I'm going to miss this year's race.
Okay.
Can you believe that?
I can't believe
We're going to miss this year's race, but I enjoy the races, and I love doing it. It's just so much fun, and anytime you need help, I'll be glad to go out there and pick up a camera and do some shooting for you.
All right. Well, we'll put you to work on Saturday.
I can't do it this year. But next time I will, though, man. I promise.
All right. Thank you, Cecil. Of course, go to scnow.com, keyword racing, to see more about some of the old Southern 500s. And, of course, keep it tuned right here, News 13, for all your coverage all weekend. That's going to do it for sports. Bob, back to you.